Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I'm here today with Iva Keene. Iva Keene, MRMed, ND, is a Swiss-based Australian-trained naturopath, internationally recognized natural fertility expert and creator of the award-winning NFP program and the NFP 16-week fertility coaching program. She is a co-founder of naturalfertilityprescription.com and the author of over 100 published articles on treating infertility naturally. I'm so excited to welcome her to the show today and talk about how to overcome male and female infertility and get pregnant naturally, even if you're in your 40s, what is behind the rising infertility rates, and how it isn't just a woman's problem, but men come into play as well. And contributing factors, our diet, our mindset, our cell phone use. There were so many fascinating things, even as far as talking about our folic acid and that we could have too much of it. So I'm really excited for anybody out there that knows somebody that is trying to get pregnant, or any of our listeners that are having infertility issues and you just need some information on what you could possibly do naturally to help yourselves out. Without further ado, I want to welcome the one, the only, Iva Keene to the Sisterhood of Sweat.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you so much for having me.
Where in the world did you get that accent?
Well, I live in Switzerland, so it's probably, a mix of German, Croatian, and Australian, which is, all the three countries are part of my background.
Well, I love it. It's going to be a treat to listen to you today. We just hit the top of the charts in Australia for fitness podcasts, so I'm pretty excited.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, and you know what? I have always dreamed of visiting Switzerland. And I know ever since I was a little girl, I love the story Heidi.
Okay.
So, in the Swiss Alps, right?
You should definitely come and visit. It's a very beautiful place.
Wow. So do you ski?
I do. I ski. I go ski touring. Yeah, we spend a lot of time in the snow here because it starts snowing in October and we've got snow until the end of April, even early May. It's fantastic.
So you grow up skiing there?
I did, yes. I think I was 4 years old when I started skiing, and I vividly remember hating it, but now I love it. So there you go.
Yeah, I remember when my daughter was younger, we went on a ski trip to Perfect North here in Indiana, because we're in the Midwest and we're not really here. We're in Ohio. We're not really around a lot of large mountains. And it was my bright idea to do this on New Year's Eve. And she was not really a nighttime person. So learning to ski at night was not great. She went with a boyfriend, and it was, he was a great skier. He was skiing the Black Diamonds, and she was like not in the mood to try anything crazy, and so we kind of teased her. We were kind of singing "On Top of Old Smoky," all covered with snow. Basically, she lost her true lover for skiing too slow. We were so bad. But, I think we could come to Switzerland and you could give us some tips on skiing. But not only that, you guys, she is an amazing naturopath, internationally recognized. She is a natural fertility expert and the creator of the award-winning NFP program. I really want to dive into this topic. I thought I'd make it a little light at first, but when you're out there searching and you have no idea how in the world you're going to get pregnant and have a beautiful baby because you're struggling, she is the expert to go to. So I'm super excited to dive into this topic, and hopefully it's going to help some of you out there that want to have your little bundle of joy.
Thank you.
How did you ever get started into fertility in the first place?
It was natural health and dealing with chronic conditions was a big dinner time topic for us when I was growing up, because I come from a family of doctors, and I would listen to my parents discussing diseases and patients. And I would always ask them, can you heal this? Is this curable? And oftentimes they would say, well, no, it's not. And I just did not, accept that answer. I thought, well, why not? Why is it, not something you can treat? And my mom had lots of books by Deepak Chopra. And his approach, was that you can heal from a lot of chronic conditions. And this is how I got interested in natural medicine and decided to go down that path rather than conventional medicine. And over time, I came across a lot of cases of couples or women trying to get pregnant. And I realized I didn't really know much about it. So that's kind of when I started digging and learning and specializing in that area. And it's one of the most rewarding areas, I think, because you can change people's lives. When you have a child, it changes everything. And I just got hooked. It was, the reward was just too good, and it felt so good. And here I am.
I love that. I love that. So, you probably have a lot better techniques than what my husband and I used when we wanted to have our third child. He wanted a baby desperately, and he's telling me I've got to put my feet up on the wall so the little guys swim home. So I was just like, it worked. It worked. We were pregnant right away. But, I'm sure you have some ways to tell male and females how to factor infertility and get pregnant naturally, even if they're in their late 40s. I was 34 at the time.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, we do. We live in a very different world today than the world when my parents were conceiving me back in 1975. And we're dealing with a lot more toxicities, different lifestyles. The lifestyles demand of us to use certain substances in order to perform, to stay at our peak, and we get addicted to that from a very early age. So a lot of women I work with, will drink 3 to 4 coffees a day, and caffeine is a natural plant pesticide, and you're trying to avoid pesticides in your food because of the damaging effect they can have on egg cells and sperm cells, but then you drink it. So it's not ideal. There are, also a lot of other problems which are not necessarily directly related to your reproductive system. So you could have a host of chronic conditions and inflammation in your system that stems from, some chronic infections in the past, or from nutrient deficiencies, or even genetic polymorphisms. And this is what we're dealing with today when we are analyzing a case. And a lot of people are delaying parenthood because they want to advance their careers, they want to complete their studies or even do postgraduate studies. And we now know that if a woman or a man are trying to conceive in their 40s, they will need some sort of assistance. It doesn't always have to be IVF. You can use preconception care, which we teach for 4 months, to optimize your health and the quality of your eggs and sperm cells so that you maximize your chances of a natural conception with your own eggs. So we had the oldest client who got pregnant at 47, also deliver a healthy baby girl at 47. We also had a lady who gave birth at 46 to her son, just 3 months shy of turning 47, where she was given only 0.5% chance of this happening naturally for them, and they tried IVF in Europe, they tried IVF in the US, and it just didn't work for them. And, so you really got to look at the person as a whole and see where the underlying issues are. And what we are finding is that infertility is more often related to some other issue in your system than the reproductive system.
So how important is it to prepare my body, my preconception care before the fact, before I even try to get pregnant? How important is preconception care for at least 4 months before conception?
Look, it's even more important than what you do in pregnancy, because those cells will become your baby's genetic blueprint. So 50% of your DNA, 50% of your partner's DNA are going to make up your baby. And we now know, for example, that electromagnetic radiation can damage the DNA, and that damage can be passed down to the next generation. So there are certain things that you need to do before you get pregnant to ensure as healthy egg cell and as healthy sperm cell as possible. And it's just as important for men to do their part too, because infertility is not, just a woman's problem. It's also a men's issue. And today, 40% of infertility is due to female factors, 40% due to male factor, and 10% is regarded, 20% is regarded as a mix or unexplained. So where both can be a contributing factor.
Well, let's jump back to the EMF, because I was really fascinated recently. I was listening to a podcast on grounding, earthing, basically, where the guy said, you've got to get your feet out there in nature on the ground so that you get the charge from the earth, and how healthy it was for you. And it was such a good podcast. The guy's name was Clint Ober. And what I also got out of it was he talked about unplugging your cell phones at night. And I've taken my cell phone and my husband's out of the room, plugged them in somewhere else, and I have slept through the night like a baby ever since. So the reason why that he had said you needed to do that, besides probably what you're going to tell me, was it increases your cortisol. And so if you have high cortisol, you don't sleep very well. You wake up in the middle of the night, you might feel like you're wired even though you're tired. And so it's really gone a long way. Why should, what are your recommendations for women trying to get pregnant around EMF?
So first recommendation would be switching Wi-Fi off at night, removing all electrical appliances from your bedroom. If you're going to keep your cell phone in the bedroom, you should keep it on flight mode and, not right next to the bed. Then, if possible, use VLAN connection in your office if you can. So you're trying to minimize the amount of electromagnetic radiation that you get exposed to. We also recommend wearing belly armor. That's a wonderful US company. They make belly blankets and tops and underwear for men that they can wear to shield their reproductive organs or pregnant belly from the radiation. Then we also recommend for men not to keep their cell phone in their pants pocket, because the close proximity to the testes can really damage the sperm. And, our bodies are not made from lead. So it's not like some men, ask, oh, can I put it in my back pocket? It's like, it doesn't make a difference. So using air tubes is also a good way to reduce the radiation when you're talking to someone on your cell phone. And try not to hold it in your hand. So keep it, next to you, because when you're holding it in your hand, the cell phone is receiving and sending most signals when it's, when you're talking to someone. So use your speakerphone as often as possible. And, also once you're pregnant, there's so many wonderful pregnancy apps that women can spend hours on and, kind of rest their hands on their pregnant belly. That's not something you should be doing either. And also check, that you're not living close to a cell phone tower, or, one of those towers which are emitting quite a bit of radiation, or that you have a big one on top of your skyrise and you're living close to the top floor. I mean, all these factors can impact your fertility and ability to stay pregnant, because studies have linked electromagnetic radiation and long hours in front of computers to miscarriages. So that's not, ideal.
No, I mean, it doesn't sound good. What is behind the rising infertility rates? I mean, why are people having such a hard time getting pregnant?
The first one would, in my experience, from what I have seen working with patients over the last 12 years, is a lot of chronic conditions, underlying chronic conditions and inflammation, which has been left unaddressed. This could be autoimmunities people are not aware of. A lot of people have thyroid antibodies without being fully aware of that. Thyroid plays a very important role when it comes to getting pregnant, because the thyroxine is like, the key to an engine. It starts the engine, gets the follicle maturation going. So if you've got underactive thyroid, or if your TSH is above 2, that's not very good for your fertility and ability to get pregnant and stay pregnant. That's a big issue. And a lot of these chronic issues stem from nutrient deficiencies, because the food majority of the people eat is not very nutritious because of the way it's grown. If you don't practice crop rotation, then the same plant is going to exhaust the soil of the nutrients it likes the most, because it's constantly leaching those nutrients out. Then if you're eating food that's loaded with pesticides, that's not going to be helping your fertility, because a lot of the pesticides act as endocrine disruptors, so they disrupt your hormonal balance, which then messes up with your egg maturation and sperm maturation in men. So you've got, we're dealing with a lot more today than my parents' generation were. So these are some of the main issues. Then obviously the plastic, which is just prevalent everywhere. And I know everyone talks about plastic, so I don't want to, talk too much about it, because I believe in this day and age, everyone, is aware of that. But one thing many people may not be aware of is that studies have shown that seafood and fish has become the biggest source of plastic in human diet, because our oceans are full of it. And that's obviously not good. Then the personal care products, cosmetics, cleaning products, they're full of chemicals which can disrupt the hormones, and which are also known to be genotoxic, meaning they can cause damage to the DNA. Overuse of antibiotics. Mitochondria share ancestral history with the primitive life forms, the first bacteria that formed on the planet. So when you take a lot of antibiotics, you can damage the mitochondria, and mitochondria are cellular engines. And when we're talking about egg health, if you're going to see a reproductive endocrinologist and they tell you your egg quality is poor, that's what they're referring to. They're referring to these engines which are not functioning properly anymore. So the cell cannot replicate properly, and therefore is more prone to chromosomal issues, which then leads to miscarriages, or high-risk pregnancies, or you find out that you're carrying a baby with Down syndrome, or one of the other chromosomal abnormalities.
What can a woman do to minimize the risk of chromosomal issues in her 40s?
That's a great question. So the good news is the studies have shown that there's a lot that can be done. So it's not, it's not something that's set in stone. You turn 40 and now it's, the game's over. What we also know from studies is that the chromosomal issues in the egg cells happen in the 4 months prior to ovulation. That's where most of the issues will happen. And that's where the egg cell divides. It undergoes 2 final sets of meiosis. So without getting too technical, it just divides before it's ready for ovulation. And that's where most chromosomal issues tend to occur. So they don't occur somewhere, you know, in that period of 40 years, but they happen right before your ovulation. So by knowing this, you know that if you eliminate certain things like alcohol, sugar, caffeine, gluten, dairy, potentially also heavy metals, if you have heavy metal toxicity that we can test for, when you correct the genetic polymorphism. So the really famous one is the MTHFR, which impacts your body's ability to use folic acid. If you have that and you're taking folic acid, you can actually do more harm than good. So you need a special form called methylfolate to enable your body to absorb it. So it's little things like these details that we analyze. There is a very long questionnaire with over 150 questions that we use on top of the tests that we analyze, test results that we analyze before we come up with a treatment plan for each person. So it's very individualized. It's not one treatment for, you know, all women of that age group.
Now, you were talking about what was it you said, if you have too much of
folic acid?
Yes, folic acid. Oh my gosh.
MTHFR mutation.
Why could there be too much folic acid? Why is
All right.
Usually they're always saying you got to have more folic acid, you need more folic acid.
Okay, great question. So if you have MTHFR polymorphism or mutation of the gene, which is responsible for transport of folic acid into the cell, your body is not able to utilize it, okay? Because you have receptor sites on the cells, and you take your folic acid supplement, the folic acid gets into your system, docks onto the receptor, but there is no mechanism to draw it into the cell. So it just sits on that receptor, blocking it, and no other form of folate can get access to the cell. So you've got naturally occurring folate from fruits and vegetables, and you also have methylfolate, which is the activated form, which could get into the cell without the transport mechanism working. So knowing this is really important, because we know that, you know, folic acid is crucial to your embryo's development. And if you don't get enough folate or folic acid or methylfolate in the first trimester of the pregnancy, you're at, you know, risk of having a baby with spina bifida or some other problems with their, I'm so sorry, my daughter's crying. This is
It's
nightmare.
Okay. You know what? This is a podcast about having children.
Okay.
Hopefully everybody still wants them. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, you know, this is part of having children. They may cry in the background when you're podcasting.
That's right. That's right. And she's 3 years old, and she's a little bit sick, got a bit of a cough. So, but that's
oh my gosh. So with the folic acid, how do I make sure I'm getting it and it's getting delivered?
So what we suggest that you do is get your genetic polymorphisms checked. That is one way. And if you have the MTHFR polymorphism of the C677T gene, then you're better off taking folinic acid or methylfolate. So it's just a different form, and you want to avoid foods which have been enriched with folic acid. So, and you will find a lot of processed foods are enriched with folic acid, such as cereals and bread and pasta. So these are the things you should be avoiding. Because of that mechanism that I explained previously, where it will sit on the receptor side, it will block it, and there will be no access.
What else should we avoid in our diet when we're trying to conceive, and why? I mean, like, should I lay off of the red wine? I mean, the coffee, the diet soda?
Absolutely. Aspartame and artificial sweeteners are not ideal. If you are going to drink anything like that, you're better off using something with stevia or xylitol, birch xylitol. You should really try not to have any alcohol, especially if you're considered older for fertility, because even small amounts can disrupt your hormones, because alcohol is sugar at the end of the day. And the problem with sugar is that it spikes your insulin. And once your insulin is spiked, it's blocking your steroid hormones, which are your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And if you're not giving your egg cells and sperm cells enough of those hormones, you can't make good quality eggs and sperm. Gluten is a big one, okay, because gluten can predispose to leaky gut, it can predispose to poor nutrient absorption, and if you're lacking in nutrients, you can't expect to be building good egg cells and sperm cells and have a hormonal balance either. Dairy is a big issue because milk is full of hormones that, like any other breast milk, that's there to help the young of the species to grow into an adult animal. And if you already have hormonal imbalances because you have PCOS or endometriosis, you don't need more on top of that. Plus, milk can also cause a lot of congestion in your system, and this can block the fallopian tubes, and you don't want that either when you're trying to get pregnant. So laying of dairy is really important. Gluten, as we mentioned, sugar because of the insulin, and processed foods, salami and things like that, which have lots of additives, nitrates, which can again act as endocrine disruptors. You should be avoiding as well. So you should be eating foods that's clean and fresh, but at the same time try not to eat raw meat or raw fish or raw eggs because of the risk of salmonella, poisoning, or some of the other bugs that may live in there. So we recommend that you act pregnant before you get pregnant, so for at least 4 months. So do everything you would do if you were pregnant, and avoid all the things that you would avoid if you were pregnant already 4 months prior to conception. So if you were,
go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that, if you were pregnant, you wouldn't be drinking coffee, you wouldn't be drinking alcohol, you would be mindful about what you're eating, you wouldn't be training for a marathon. So, these are the things you should be doing already 4 to 6 months prior to conception.
So where does exercise play in the mom-to-be trying to conceive?
That's a great question, and it really depends on the person, where they're at. Are they overweight? Are they, normal weight? Are they underweight? What sort of exercise their body is used to already? So you would not be starting a new regime if you haven't started it before. For example, you wouldn't start jogging if you were never jogging before. It's not a good time. But if you're someone who's been jogging, for years and years before, it's totally okay for you to maintain that, but, maybe not train for a marathon. Keep it shorter, and, don't overexert yourself after ovulation, because you may be pregnant. You may not know that you're pregnant yet because you have the 2-week wait, but you may be pregnant. So you want to take it down a notch, or don't do hot yoga in the second half of your cycle. You could maybe do it in the first half of your cycle, but after ovulation, stick to just normal yoga. Same with the exercises. You can push yourself harder in the first half of your cycle. So you could do high intensity interval training. You could do your CrossFit classes in the first half, but after ovulation, don't do it. But again, you need to check the person's thyroid function, their adrenal function, and see where they're at. If they're adrenally exhausted, if they have autoimmune conditions, if their body's fighting infections, you don't want to be pushing them into more physical stress, because that's just going to deplete their vital energy, and it's going to push their immune system even further. That's why there is no one size fits all. And you really got to look at each person on a case-by-case basis.
Well, what can men, we've been talking about women, but what can men do to help pregnancy along and keep their little guys healthy, their sperm ready for healthy conception?
So the boys can, do the same preconception period of preparation. It takes 76 days to 90 days to mature a new batch of sperm. So while women are born with all their eggs, which are in their primordial form, and they start maturing them every from 4 months from puberty until menopause, in men you have a different system. They produce new sperm from scratch every 76 to 90 days. So it's 3 months to make it easy. That means that, if a man had to take antibiotics, had a couple of big nights with the boys, maybe is smoking or is an occasional smoker, maybe enjoys some recreational drugs from time to time, loves riding a bike in those tight pants. All these factors are not good for the sperm. So if he changes all that, plus on top of that, switches to organic diet, filters his water, stops drinking, reduces caffeine intake or stops caffeine intake altogether, takes the supplements which are prescribed for him based on his case history, and addresses some of the underlying issues, if there are any, in his health, he can optimize the health of the next batch. Because, what are sperm? Sperm are vectors of the man's genetic material. This is, a mechanism that delivers his genetic material to the egg cell. And they need to be as healthy as they can for this process to happen. And it's quite amazing when you look at the distances they need to cover. So it's like from the vagina to the fallopian tube is the same distance as swimming from London to New York. And just as you have sharks and jellyfish and giant squid and God knows what else in the ocean, you have all, plethora of bacteria in the vagina, which would be more than happy to attack and damage that sperm. And this is why women produce fertile mucus, which creates little channels for them to swim in and protects them from a lot of this environment. So it's a pretty fascinating journey they have to undertake. So the best thing men can do is, follow the preconception program. Also be mindful of electromagnetic radiation. Don't keep your laptops on your lap. Don't keep the cell phones in your pants pocket if they're not going to be on flight mode. Things like that. And, ideally they would do this for at least 3 months prior to conception. And then once the woman is pregnant, they wouldn't stop. They would wait until she's in the second trimester. And that's because in the first trimester, the risk of miscarriage is the highest. So, in case this does happen, the sperm are prepped for the next round of trials.
Okay. Wow. There's so much involved into this. So, but it's not all physical. Your emotions and your beliefs impact your fertility too. Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. I think in this day and age, we are, bombarded with negativity around fertility, and especially if a woman is over 35 or 38, and God forbid if she's in her 40s, it's like, well, it's all finished now. Your eggs are too old, you need to use donor eggs. And this is what they're hearing from everyone, from their GP to their gynecologist. And if they end up seeing a reproductive endocrinologist, it's all very grim and dark. And a lot of women, will send us emails and tell us they, ran out of their offices crying, believing they can never have a child with their own eggs.
Oh.
And it's really extremely depressing. And
Yeah.
if everyone around you is, giving you negative feedback, you start thinking those thoughts and believing those thoughts, and your subconscious mind, takes them as commands and starts instructing your body to behave in that way. So it's very important that you monitor the beliefs and the thoughts that go through your head, and to catch them and then use affirmations or emotional freedom technique tapping, so EFT tapping, to help reprogram some of these beliefs. We also recommend meditation, we recommend visualizations, and we work with our clients through this. We work through their belief systems, and we help them change these beliefs so they believe in things that actually serve them and that help their bodies improve their fertility.
Well, I know that our beliefs are important because, there's the placebo effect where sometimes, they run tests where somebody takes this medicine and this is a placebo, and the person gets results because they believed that it was going to work.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Dr. Joe Dispenza wrote a fantastic book called You're the Placebo, where he explains that and a lot more, and where people were able to change their DNA through meditations and through simply changing what they believe in. So
well, yeah, your thoughts are powerful, and I think the words you say and the things you put in your mind are powerful, and that's why podcasts are so awesome, because you can kind of reprogram your mind if you're having all this negative talk going on and this banter in your head, just by listening to more positive things.
absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of the people who come to us say, I wish I knew about this before. I wish I knew that I could improve my fertility and the quality of the egg cells and sperm cells, that it's not all that negative. And there are lots of studies to back this. So yes, there's a lot of hope and reason to be optimistic.
I love this. And what would you say is one of your success stories that stands out the most in your mind?
One of the success stories that stands out the most is the lady who did a video for us that's available on our YouTube channel. Her name is Rossi. She's the lady who gave birth at 46, 3 months before turning 47, and she's holding her 3-month-old boy, and she's crying in the video because it was so difficult for her to go through this journey and to be exposed to all this negativity and to be told that they only had 0.5% chance of getting pregnant because of her poor egg quality and her age and her husband's poor sperm quality. And they got pregnant in the 4th month of doing our program, and she had a healthy pregnancy. We were supporting her throughout, and she delivered a beautiful healthy baby boy naturally. And she did this wonderful video, and it's really encouraging for anyone who is in her shoes, where she was before she got pregnant, to watch it. And there were quite a few minor things which were not very obvious. And when you use functional medicine reference ranges for certain functions like your thyroid function, you can easily see if an organ is out of balance, and how to balance it, to bring it back, to bring the whole system back into balance, to make it possible to get pregnant and to stay pregnant. So this is one of my favorite stories because there's just so much emotion in that video.
I love that. And, there's something to be said about not accepting limiting beliefs from others. Like when someone is saying, you're too old to do that, or, there's no way, you're getting these things in your mind, ageism.
Yeah.
Ageism.
Yeah.
I think we should define ourselves, and you don't know what's possible for you until you get out there and you try, and they could come to you and get all these great tips. Where can they find you on social media, and how can they download the report that you have?
So the report, I sent a link, so maybe if it's in the show notes, they can download it from there. They can also find us on naturalfertilityprescription.com website and fertility-coach.com. We are also on Facebook under Natural Fertility. We are on Instagram under Natural Fertility as well. We are on Twitter. We're everywhere. So
And can they work with you online?
yes, they can. So we have a 4-month online coaching program that they can join online. They can work with me. They can work with one of our other coaches. We've got 2 more coaches based in Australia. So between the 3 of us, we cover all the time zones. And, we've got different plans and with different number of consultations. And it's all done on Zoom or Skype. So you can see me just like you're seeing me now. And yeah.
I love it. Give me something that you might say in Switzerland that we wouldn't say in America.
Oh dear. You mean like a saying or just
Yeah.
greeting or
Yeah, something that's just kind of quirky.
quirky? Okay. Kuchikastli.
Oh my gosh.
It's a kitchen cabinet. It's a Swiss German word.
I love it. Say it one more time for us.
Kuchikastli.
I love it. I love it. This is awesome.
It's a
See,
tongue
we
breaker.
all learned something new today. Wow, this is so cool. I would love to come visit you sometime. We're going to
Please do.
Ireland next week, so Switzerland's
Wonderful.
on the list next.
Brilliant. Please do. Please let me know when you're here. Try to come while we have some snow. So
Oh yeah,
go skiing.
that sounds awesome. What are 3 tips you could leave today for anyone out there trying to get pregnant? Just 3 simple tips.
So the first tip is don't give up on yourself and your egg cells and sperm cells. And age is the only factor you've got 0 control over. So don't make that your limiting belief, because your biological age is a lot more important than your chronological age. That's number 1. Number 2, pay attention to what you're putting in your mouth, what you're drinking and what you're eating, because what you eat and what you drink will become part of your cells. These are your building blocks of your cells. So ask yourself before you eat something, is this going to build good, healthy cells or not? And the third factor is be really mindful of the electromagnetic radiation. It's something we're all taking for granted because it's invisible. You can't smell it, you can't see it, you can't taste it. And it's just very convenient, but it's also really harmful. And, really do a thorough analysis of your home and your workspace to identify the sources. And there's a lot of wonderful information out there, the information that we share to protect yourself from the radiation.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. I just want to acknowledge you so much for being so in touch with the natural methods of getting pregnant and all of the things that can contribute to people's infertility, and just being an expert in such an important field for the next generation.
Thank you very much, Linda.
And I want to thank everyone for listening to the Sisterhood of Sweat today. Make sure to check out Iva Keene's report. We're going to leave it in the show notes. And thanks again for listening, everyone.